Bye.
Hi everyone, I'm Nicole Migueli, and today I have Noor with me.
Hello.
Do you want to tell me a little bit about yourself?
No, you tell them. No, I'm kidding. Yes, I'm Noor. I currently am working on a graphic novel on my downtime, but I like to post personal comics online, and y'all seem to enjoy them. I've worked at Marvel and a show called Solar Opposites, as well as The Proud Family for a little bit. And yeah, I'm excited to talk here with little Nicole.
Tell me your favorite quote, but like in your own words.
Oh, that's a tough one, Nicole. Holy, that's an icebreaker. Oh God. Favorite quotes. That's a tough one. Ooh, okay. I mean, I like this one that's basically why do you create this is more of something that I struggle with, which is creating for the sense of it's kind of like what you want to talk about today, art and fear. And it's kind of like this woman is talking to her therapist, and her therapist is asking her why she struggles to write, because this woman's a writer. And this woman's like, because it's me. It has to be perfect in every way because it's me. And for me, that's so poignant because I think so many of us struggle with perfection and with being the best versions of ourselves to the point where we censor ourselves. So I love this the pain in that quote, which is just basically sometimes we don't want to reveal ourselves, the parts of ourselves that we banish and kind of run away from. So yeah, that's, even though it's a bit sad, that's kind of my favorite quote because it's so relatable.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's such a lovely quote. I love that.
Thank you. Yeah, it's always gets me.
So, what role has fear played in your own art?
I mean, it's always there hanging out in the corner. It's always lurking. I think that with fear, it's something that we all experience. And, usually it creeps up on us. Usually, like recently, I was going through a bout of an art block. And sometimes I think there's an art block where you need to take a step back and just kind of go live your life. But there's also this period, there's also this different one, which is distinct from kind of taking a step back, where you just avoid it. You just avoid thinking about art. You're avoiding doing things that you love because you're scared, and it creeps up on you in a way because usually it's not art that upsets you. Sometimes you have like difficult time with family, maybe something bad happens in your personal life, whatever. And that's kind of what happened to me, where I just suddenly, like every time I would open my sketchbook or go on my Cintiq, I would just have this critical voice just screaming at me. So it's definitely there. It's always a battle, sometimes you'll win some, sometimes you'll lose some, but the point is you never give up. And honestly, the more mistakes you make, the more successful you become. So it's I've adopted a kind of value where making mistakes is good. Like I crave mistakes. And I know that kind of sounds like what's the opposite from what I just said, where I'm scared of mistakes, but I think it's kind of like it's a love-hate relationship. And it's just all about that balance where you take time to just let yourself be scared and then go, okay, I can feel the fear. I can literally physically feel it. It's making me not want to open my laptop. It's making me feel sweaty. I'm going to sit with it for a second, and I'm going to go on my laptop and I'm going to draw for a bit and see how that feels. So I think it's about acknowledging, number one. Number two, accepting. And then number three is doing it anyway, but maybe in small steps. Yeah.
That's lovely. That reminds me of something that you mentioned to me a while back. You said failing is falling upwards. I have that pasted in my
Yes. Oh
sketchbook
my
everywhere.
God, I love
But yeah,
that.
it's such a wonderful quote, and it definitely like changed my mindset about art. I'm really really interested, like how you just explained about how that resonates in your life. Like, what does it mean to
Yes.
you and the art that you create?
Yeah. So, I mean, failing upward is the perfect, I don't even remember saying that. I mean, go past
Yeah.
more. But yeah, it's literally just about, like, I think it was a friend who told me about it, where I was asking him like how do you accept failure? And he used to be a businessman, and he told me like every time he'd go up to shops where he know he's gonna get a no, and he'll just hear the no. He just went to hear the no, and sometimes he'll get a yes, you know. And to me that was so powerful, because I do the opposite sometimes, where I'll be like, oh, they're gonna say no, so why even ask,
Yeah.
you know.
Hmm.
And I think we all do that, and we forget that we are allowed to take space up in this world. We're allowed to make mistakes. We're allowed to look stupid in front of others for the sake of our growth and our well-being, you know. I think it's just about letting go of how we look when we make mistakes. I think that's the hardest part, is failing in front of others. But once we realize that everybody else is failing too, in multitude of ways, that's the only way successful people become successful, is by learning how to adapt to mistakes, learning to adapt to failures. There's this concept, the fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. And I fucking love this so much. It's basically a fixed mindset. You can be fixed and growth in different things, but basically a fixed mindset is kind of being like, oh, I can't, what's the word? I can't do a push-up. I'm never going to be able to do a push-up. This sucks. And you kind of just leave it at that. Versus someone who tries to do a push-up and they're like, wow, I can't do a push-up. I'm going to go research this. What kind of exercises are going to help me get to the push-up? So it's kind of about adapting. Literally, it's about going from A to B and not feeling bad about it and not avoiding it, and just accepting that it has to happen to get to E or C, like whatever. And it's kind of like really cool, because you can have a growth mindset in one thing. Like maybe you'll be super great when it comes to your workouts, you'll be always adapting and stuff, but with your art you'll just be like, oh, I can't get better, I just don't know how to do this, so that's just me. And I think that comes from a self coping mechanism where you're scared, and that's okay. But kind of just understanding that the world is so large, like literally so many things have happened in this world, like Trump became president, you know, like it's insane, the world is insane. And you have to accept that just because you failed maybe 100 times, maybe 101 times will be the time that you actually do it. You have to accept that the world is bigger than your patterns in the past. Don't like turn it into a self-fulfilling prophecy when you just stay in the same mindset of, oh, I'm gonna fail because I failed before.
That is
Even there's this, oh no,
oh, sorry.
yeah,
I
it's
just said that is lovely.
thank you. No, I was gonna say that like even with me, I've noticed, you know, sometimes I'll be working really hard, but I'm not working smart. Recently I've adopted this thing where I will maybe do a comic or storyboard, and I pay attention to what took me the longest. And back when, you know, I don't know, even up to maybe a year ago, I wouldn't do this as often, or you know, it's one of those things that you'll confront your fear and then you'll stop confronting it. It's like a battle that keeps on going. But anyway, I noticed that, you know, there were certain things slowing me down. Like maybe I haven't done gesture drawing in a while. So I paid attention to that, and I went and I did life drawing on the side for a couple of days, and I noticed my speed was increasing. So like, don't go run a marathon with like a twisted ankle. Why would you do that? Just heal it up. Do the thing, do the homework, eat your veggies, pay attention to what's slowing you down, and literally just do some studies of it, you know. um so yeah, that's kind of something that I really recommend doing.
That's really great. I love that mindset because the fixed mindset is like, I think people say, like, that's how I am, this is how I am, so that's never going
Mm-hmm.
to change. But the growth is accepting that the world is always in flux, and so are you. And
Yes,
there's always that capacity.
exactly,
That's lovely.
exactly. Thank you. Yeah, like it's so true, because it's not, it's just so insane, like literally we are bound, and it's okay, because I think the number one step to changing is your habits. I think that's something very critical, and I want to like really stress on habits. And this is something that many people struggle with. You know, if you grew up learning how to do everything that you need to get done, I commend you. But you know, for the majority, I doubt most of us struggle with it. And it comes from steps, small steps. I cannot emphasize, you cannot go and do this all at once. You cannot spend 10 hours drawing every single day when for the past month or so you haven't picked up a pencil. Start slow. There's no shame in it. It's think about it in the long term. Patience is literally a virtue when it comes to habits. Like patience is something that you need to work on and you need to kind of cultivate when it comes to learning how to become a master at something. You need to have the patience to accept that it's going to take time. So, you know, you haven't picked up a pencil for a month. What do? Literally tomorrow when you're stressed out, I have this thing called the 10-minute rule, and it's basically spend 10 minutes on the thing you don't want to do. Just put a timer. Like putting a timer, like the physical act of putting a timer incentivizes you to do the thing that you are dreading, because 10 minutes doesn't feel like a lot, you know? I mean, it's really not. And if 10 minutes feels too taxing, put it on 5. If 5 minutes is too much, put it on 2. Literally just make 2 drawings. And you'll be surprised if you do that for a week, you'll find yourself picking up your pencil the next week. You'll find yourself doing it regardless. And then you can start to increase your hours and start to add things that you were scared of. There was a period where I was so anxious and all I would focus on, like I remember I was just focusing on studies. I wasn't even focusing on my personal work. I was just doing studies for a while. And once I felt like I found myself, you know, doing studies as a second instinct, I started to elevate it and I was like, okay, you know what? Today I'm going to be really scared, but I'm going to do my comics, you know? And it's honestly like our bodies are designed to value comfort. You know, our brain is very against learning new things, but it's also at the same time, it's a very adaptable muscle. You know, our brains will allow it to happen as long as we introduce it in increments. Yeah, that's something that I really value and I'm glad I got out of the way.
Wow. So I'm curious, what are
Yeah.
the habits that you were talking about? What habits have you built that you're kind of seeing the results of now? And is there anything you're
Mm,
starting of you're like since
yeah,
quarantine?
oh yes, that's a good question. I mean, I'll talk to you like, okay, so, uh, for example, I didn't have a lot of habits when I was in Cal Arts, when I went to college. Like I had like when I was in high school, I went to a really shitty school that valued only like sciences and memorizing. So I
Mhm.
didn't like to study. You know, I didn't like to study. I didn't have value in it. I used to think that I was dumb. You know, that was that's not what you want to go in. And like in a sense, I had a fixed mindset on my intelligence. You know, I always thought that that's just how I was. So when I went to school, you know, art was always this thing that I did for fun. Art was always my freedom. I spent hours on art and it felt good. So once I went to school, that changed because your art becomes your work. And that's always a very complicated relationship for every artist, is to balance the work element with the love and the passion that you had for it. So I noticed myself struggle a lot. You know, I struggled so much at school. I would even like, I remember there were days where I would have an assignment done, but I didn't like how it was, so I wouldn't go to class, so I didn't have to show it in front of others. You know, that is me running away. And it's okay. I don't blame myself because I was going through a lot at the time. So I let myself be who I was and accept that that's then and this is now, and that's now is what I have control over. So at school I didn't have any habits, but I still did draw. I still did it from time to time, but I feel like I stunted my growth in a way by thinking, by not cultivating the habits that I'm about to explain to you now. Like I remember I wouldn't use reference a lot. You know, I think it never got to me that every artist uses reference for every single thing and it makes an art 10 times better. Y'all use your reference. Don't fall into that you need to know it by through your head. propaganda. It's so not true. um if I didn't know how to do something, I would just focus maybe on something that I did know how to do, because of the stress of not wanting to do two things at once. No, but I did do a lot of work and I did learn a lot of things. But anyway, once I graduated, that's when I didn't have my friends in the labs with me to like motivate me to work. I had to do it all by myself. So I started to kind of just go to baby steps. And for me, sketching and making comics, I think that was something I did almost as for myself at first, and it was like a second language for me. It was kind of a way to let out my emotions, and that was always something that I had. So to turn that into something that I can post on the regular was difficult. So in terms of habits, I would do figure drawings, 10 minutes a day, maybe once a week. I would pay attention to shows that I like and write them down so that I could study them for later. I would, what else? I mean, it's like stuff like that. There wasn't anything huge or big. It was just small incremental things that I started to do. I would make a list of things I like about my art and things I wanted to improve. And I would focus on one at a time. Like there was a period where I would really focus on perspective. So I would take photos, in my house or apartment, or, find something off Pinterest and just draw it and paint it out. And getting that drawing mileage, like your hand learns faster than your brain. So getting the drawing mileage makes you improve way faster than you think you can, as long as you get that mileage out. Even doing studies on YouTube of motions, just putting it on 0.25 speed and just framing through things that you don't know how to animate. I learned some anatomy. I opened up some books and just like would copy them for a while, and it slowly kind of just went into my brain, and I was able to, harvest more shortcuts and stuff like that. So it's kind of like I didn't do anything drastic, honestly. It was kind of through time. I just paid attention to those things and kept it on the side of my already main thing, which is like telling stories. I really do think there's value in, whatever you do want to improve in, just keeping it in the back burner. For me, it was draftsmanship and storytelling. So I would always pay attention. I've been watching Avatar: The Last Airbender. It's a shame that I haven't watched it until now. But I used to not really enjoy action films or like shows. So like it's fine. I watched at the right time and point in my life. But I just love all the scenes and all the characters, and like even just one of the main characters starts out as a villain and slowly has this arc, and it's just so great. And I jotted it down in my notebook. They had a character with him that was sympathetic, Uncle Ira with Zuko, and it really, like, it was such a cool arc to just how they introduced it. Uncle Iroh used to be more villainous, and he after his son died, he changed. So there was an incident that allowed the character growth. So stuff like that I love to analyze. Something other artists can do. Totally. It's literally just looking into your passions and just focusing on how do you go from A to B.
That is so great. That you're right. It's so easy to get like overwhelmed by all the
Oh
stuff
yeah.
that you're not doing. So I
Mhm.
love that you just pick one and you go with it, and over time you've been able to do it. That's awesome.
Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you. It's totally the best way to do it, because you will never be satisfied with what you know. I mean, it's easy to say that because I know from years of experience, like looking back, and like I have a little to-do list. I have a little list of things I wanted in my art maybe 4 years ago, and I'm looking at it right now, and it's funny because I think I did most of the things on the list, but I'm still not satisfied. I still want more. So you kind of like have to really just enjoy the journey. I know that's so cheesy, like enjoy the journey, not the end result. but it has truth in the sense that you have to always be hungry. I read this thing that was that artists stagnate when, not when they fail, but when they're bored. And I thought that was so mind-blowing, because I experienced that. There was a period where I was doing comics and I was kind of bored of doing it. So I kind of just took a step back, but actually pushing through that boredom leads to innovation and leads to kind of going from E to F to G, you know. And I think just finding ways to stay interested and to stay passionate is so important, because that's how you make the journey way easier on yourself. And you have to remember that art is a discipline. Like it's something that we have to treat as a subject worth learning, but at the same time acknowledge the, what's the word, the privilege it is to do something that is so full of love and joy at times, you know. And I think the best way to do that is just to look within yourself. I remember when I was at school and struggling to figure out my art identity and like who I was, I remember at that period of my life, even I would adopt a sort of different personality anytime I'd hang out with a different friend. So I made a list. I just opened, like, 2 pages of my sketchbook, and I made like list after list of all the things I like, all the things I dislike, little things like, oh, I don't like tomatoes, or I really like the movie Gone Girl, like whatever. I just put it into a list, and I just looked at it and I was like, this isn't fully who I am, but it's a good start, you know. I looked at patterns, I looked at things that I like, I looked at aesthetics I liked, I looked at values that I held. I think something very important when it comes to storytelling in specific is have a voice, in terms of know what you represent. And if you don't know what you represent, the search can be your voice, you know, like I'm searching for something to care about, or whatever it is that you are. There's something unique within all of us that's worth telling, you know. Like art is a community and we feed off each other, you know. Like I'm not gonna tell a story about, like, queer artists can tell their experiences better than I can, but like for me as an Arab girl, I can tell my experiences, but I'm not just only defined by my culture and identity. I can talk about how I really like my dog, or I like to hang out with my friends, or I like to read. Like all these little things make us a unique and individual, and it makes us interesting, you know. The boring characters are one dimension, you know. Those are the ones that we don't relate to or resonate with. The ones with multiple aspects to their personality are usually the ones that are going to be all over Tumblr with people drawing fan art of them. So, and you are a character in yourself as well, so kind of understanding what it is you're here for, because, you know, I think that's really gonna set the tone for more genuine work. I think more truth in whatever you're going to be doing.
Yeah, for
I don't
sure.
know how I got to that, but yeah, that's just a
Yeah,
little.
that's something that I really like personally love about your work, especially
Oh,
like your
thank you.
personal comics.
Uh-huh.
They're so real, and there's this progression
Mm.
of growth and change. Like in your comics about the scars, like healing the scars and the polar bear and the conversations with
Yeah.
your younger self. I'm really curious, since that's just such a constant theme in your work. What does that mean to you? Why is that an important story for you to tell?
That that's honestly because I think of myself as, like, I used to be the underdog, you know. I went from zero to hero, you know. Hero is in quotations because it's really funny when you see how sometimes people, like my followers or like other people in the industry, would perceive me versus how I perceive myself, and how I used to perceive myself, more importantly. And the reason that's in my work is because I used to be very much that fixed mindset kid. I used to be a loner who didn't really need friends. I basically cut out that part of myself that needed emotions. I remember when I was in high school, my goal was to be to be invisible, to basically nobody, if nobody knew me, nobody could judge me. That was basically my mantra. So I remember one time I was walking in front of this classmate of mine, and he was reading through a roster, and he was just like, he went, "Who the fuck is Noor Rasoul?" And I was like right behind him, you know.
Oh,
It's
oh no.
fine. Like,
Yeah,
oh,
I've had that experience too. Like teachers, I
really?
used to sit in the front of the class, so teachers would notice me. I had the same thing, and they'd just
Uh-huh.
look right past me and mark me absent. So
Oh
yeah,
my
I totally
God.
relate to that, feeling
Well, yeah,
invisible.
I mean, yeah, and like honestly, like I wanted that. I wanted to be
Yeah,
invisible,
for
but
sure.
it I don't think that was my true self. I think that was a coping mechanism for being in a place that I don't think I I couldn't grow in that place basically. And that's okay, you know, when we're young, those are formative years though. So for me, there was that there's always that constant battle between maybe my little self who, you know, was so, you know, ready to play, ready to hang out, ready to do whatever and make friends, and the self that I became later on, which just wanted to run away. Like I always get that feeling where I just want to get out of the spotlight. Like I struggle to post regularly because I don't want people to know everything going on in my life at the moment. That's just my own, like my own internal dialogue. So it's interesting because I used to be anxious. I used to not like talking to people. I would never ever, you know, be the kind of person that was sweet to strangers. Like I was just very to myself. I would read my books, go draw. It was just about me. Um and you know, slowly art was the thing that opened me up. Like, you know, art was the only thing that I was passionate about. It led me to apply to art schools. It led me to go to a place where I actually craved and valued the opinions of others. And then it taught me to kind of trust in the world, you know, like you're gonna get judged, and you're gonna have people who dislike you, and you're gonna find people who love you and adore you and actually need you in their life. And I think that's the thing, is like, again, bravery and courage needed to be there for me to kind of go from that that shift. It was a lot of mistakes. It was a lot of embarrassing moments, you know. Like I remember when I was a first year, I didn't really make any friends. Like all the friends I have now, it came through me being desperately lonely. So I adapted, I learned how to make friends. I learned what people want is to be heard. So every time I'd meet someone, I would treat them like a character, you know? Like when you talk to someone, when they tell you about their childhood, imagine that childhood. Ask questions about that childhood. Like be curious, because I think that's really what we all want in each other's lives. We just want someone who is curious about us. We just want someone who will ask us, why did you do that? Are you okay? You know, and putting that into my art was easy, you know. It's funny that I do have the success I have now because I really didn't anticipate it, and I'm so grateful for it. But sometimes I'm scared of it. Like sometimes I'm genuinely like just want to post things and have nobody I know read them, you know. And I think that's the hard part about being honest as an artist, you know. I think you can always disguise that honesty through different characters and different stories. I think that's such a powerful tool. But it's still going to be hard because to be completely honest with yourself, you have to be completely honest with other people as well. So finding that delicate balance between revealing too much and not being authentic is always like a tricky line. Usually with my art, I like to discuss things that I've experienced in the past. So not something I'm currently going through, you know, like if I haven't found the resolution, you know, A, B, C, like beginning, middle, end, I don't like to talk about it. And, you know, sometimes I will, you know, but I think it comes from that point of just acknowledging that these people are looking to it and they're going to take something out of it, and you don't want to like spout off any like toxic or negative, um I don't know, whatever stories, more or less, because sometimes I'll be going through something really hard and like I want to make a comic about it, but that's when I keep it for myself, you know. And I think that distinction is just important, because but also important to acknowledge, because I don't want people to think I'm perfect. I'm far from it. um but yeah, that's just my thing on how in the past I always kind of go through those themes of struggling with that darker pull, kind of light and dark, running away and putting yourself out there. It's really prevalent in my life, and I'm sure in so many people. Like it's with art is hard, especially during the social media age. People are posting art that is amazing every second. Every time I refresh my page, I'm like, oh shit, that's good. You know,
And it's made
it's
by like a
hard.
12-year-old, and you're like,
Yeah. And it's like I really do think it stunts our growth a little bit. You know, I think that if we didn't know about like how amazing everyone was, sometimes it might be easier. But so what's the solution? Is the solution to get rid of Instagram? But then you'll be missing out on this great art. So I think it's about balance, you know, spend some time on Instagram, but then get off it, and just, who cares if someone's better than you? You know what I like to say? Steal what that you like about their art. I don't know if you read the book Steal Like an Artist. I
yeah,
heavily
I
recommend
did.
it.
Yeah. Oh my
Yes.
God, I love that book. I actually have
Yes.
Austin. It's all over my wall over here, but I
Oh,
love
that's so
Austin
awesome.
Kleon. The best book.
Yes.
Yes.
Honestly. And I was gonna just kind of like reference the rule in that book, which is basically steal from the people you admire. Steal many things from many people. Never steal from one person, y'all.
That is
Just
illegal.
yes, very true. um so yeah, like just you know, you can look at someone's art and be like, oh, that's really good, I'm gonna go cry. Or you can go like, ah, that's really good, I'm just gonna see why I like it and just put it in here, like I'm just gonna put that in, like, you know, it's so fun. And like honestly, you're not gonna get it exactly the same, you're just gonna make your own version of it. And when you keep adding on from different artists and different inspirations, and just really just be in that mindset of abundance. You know, we all have space to be awesome, we all want to succeed, we want, you know, if I want to be at the top, I want y'all to come with me. You know, it's not a competition. So I think seeing that from a space of abundance allows you to grow even further, because you're not threatened, you're not scared. Because when you feel scared, it kind of it like weakens you, and it blocks out your creativity. I've noticed when I'm scared, it's hard for me to be creative. So yeah, like view the world as abundance.
Wow, that's a great growth mindset.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, my still, I still have times where I'm like, bitch, I'm not gonna do anything today.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. I don't think that goes away. Like even with
No,
people that
100%.
even with people that I've talked with who have been in the industry for like decades. That
Oh,
like
100%.
who is uh oh my God, I am blanking. I'm blanking, but the really great Glenn Keane. Glenn Keane still
Ah!
thinks that he's like not the best in the world, which is
You know, that's so true, because like I remember I was talking to like undergraduate, like a, sorry, what's the word? Like someone who was still at school, and they were talking to me about like, oh yeah, I got so nervous when I posted this thing, and I was like, oh my God, I get nervous all the time. And they were like, they kind of just looked at me for a beat, and they were like, huh, I guess that never goes away. And I was like, yeah, bitch, it never goes
yeah, for
away.
sure.
Yeah, it's so funny. Like Glenn Keane, you wouldn't imagine that, but it's really just human nature to doubt what you do. And I think I read this really cool book, and it was talking about all of that as chatter. Chatter. Literally everything that's stopping you from doing the thing is all chatter. Like literally don't even bother with it. Just label it as chatter, as nonsense, as just everything you're just stopping you from doing the thing that you have to do. Because the more important something is for you, the more you're going to have that mental resistance, the more you're going to have that chatter in your head. So literally just label it as such and just keep doing it. Keep doing it. And it's hard because I think you need to like acknowledge that there's going to be a part of us that wants to be critical about our art. We want that to see that point where we want to be like, okay, but I do want to improve this thing. So how the fuck do I improve it if I have to accept it? So, just like try the 80-20% rule, 80% of the time, just do it. Maybe 20% of the time you can be critical. 20% of the time you can be like, okay, what can I improve? You can do a thing where like every month you just have assignments and you do them all. And then once you do them, you go back and you look on it and you go like, okay, what did I hate doing? What did I feel like I don't like? And focus on that thing. So I think there has to be a bit of period between doing the thing, reflection, and then working on whatever you want to do that needs to be done. Because even when I was like, I'm working on a bunch of boards right now for fun, and I think there was like, I was paying attention to like, oh, I'm really struggling to get some backgrounds of suburban houses, or like try to get some interesting shots in this thing. So later on, I'm gonna go look at some fucking shots of areas like that and try to study that. But right now, I just want to get the story across for fun. So it's really important to know when is the right time to go and fix the thing that you're trying to do, you know?
I
So
love that. It's
yeah.
like flipping the canvas or like coming back to your art like a day later. You
Yes.
always have that
Yes.
like clarity.
Mm-hmm,
Yeah.
mm-hmm. 100%.
I'm curious about how do you differentiate something between I hate doing this versus I fear doing this. I'm scared of doing this.
That's such a good question. Well, I think the best question to ask yourself is, have I ever enjoyed doing this? You know? And I think also it comes from, that's a really good question. Do you mean this in terms of art or just anything in general?
Anything in general, but mainly art.
Okay. Well, I would say you have to keep trying it from time to time again. A good example is I used to hate tomatoes. I even made a comic where I mentioned I hate tomatoes. But then I kept trying it. There was a period where I was like, I need to eat more veggies, and I suddenly I was like, okay, I don't hate them anymore. I think they're okay, but I'm not gonna eat them with everything. So I think it's about figuring out what your values are. For me, my values were I want to eat more veggies. And part of eating more veggies was eating tomatoes, because tomatoes is a very popular staple in our foods. So I think it depends on your values. So like if you hate fucking, I don't know, skateboarding, you don't have to skateboard if that's not something that aligns with what you want to do. But if you want to get better at like finding fun, entertaining ways to exercise, maybe give it a chance. Maybe give like scooter riding or bicycling a chance. I think it really depends on what your values are and what you're trying to achieve, and whether or not that's a big part of it. Because if you tell me you hate perspective and you're trying to be a storyboard artist, I got news for you, kid. You gotta keep going. It's like it's really just about being like smart about it, I guess, and also paying attention to why you hate it. Sometimes you hate it because you're doing studies of like horribly complex perspective grids. Why don't you just do something simple where you just line it out? Like it really, you have to find a way to make it fun. Then in that scenario, find a way to make it fun. Go study a really cool show that you love, and just figure out the perspective in those backgrounds, even if they're simple backgrounds. There's no rule with art. I mean, there are rules, but they're there to break. And I think that's the really cool thing, is like when you're learning things, there are no rules. So it's just about experimenting. I think experimenting with how to enjoy something, because I think enjoying something is critical to getting better at it. Even if, like, because you're not going to do something you hate, you're not going to keep doing it. I mean, like, I really struggled with, like, I was talking to you, I struggled with using perspective a lot. Not perspective, using reference a lot in my art. Like, that was something that was always like a drag to me. So what I did was I had a Pinterest board, and I've had a Pinterest board for years. It's not like I never use reference, but I just started using Pinterest way more. I started collecting references of many things that I like on my downtime, and the way I did that was by making boards of fan art of things that I really enjoy, you know, and then I lost interest more. So then I started looking at more cool pictures, and suddenly I started to get into that because we are very, again, the muscle, the brain, when we attach a value of like, oh, I hate this, it's going to be really hard to break through it. But you have to kind of be in a space of accepting that, hey, I don't like this that much, but I want to change that. Like, just put it that part of, but I want to change that. It depends. It really depends on if you want to change it or not. So you have to go back and look at your core values, you know? So yeah, I think that's the best way to kind of battle fear and hate.
Wow. When you were talking about the perspective thing, it is literally like you were peering into my soul because
Girl.
like literally
Girl.
yesterday. No, not but like literally yesterday I was practicing perspective and I was trying to figure out like how you said to make it more fun. Right now I'm really obsessed with the owl house. So I put Luce in a box
Yes.
and drew her from different angles and suddenly I was having fun.
So
Yeah.
smart.
That's
I love
totally
that.
true. Yeah, I love that advice for sure.
Thank you. I mean, you're already following it without even me saying it. Like it's something intuitive, you know? It's really, really powerful to do because I think we really do put ourselves into this box of I can't do this. Like I remember I used to say at school, I can't pitch, I can't be a storyboard artist. I'm too scared. It's like all the cool kids are doing it. Why would I do it, you know? And look at me now, y'all. It's gonna be difficult, like, and it's just important to really just look at what it is that's holding you back. Is it really something you're not enjoying, or is it just, you know, the exhaustion of being afraid? And being afraid is really hard. I know there's a psychological element of what I like to call, like, I was kind of looking back at things where when I'm in a rut, there are three core things for me that stop me. And this was just like looking back on my mistakes, you know, in the past. And it's good to reflect on your mistakes because why are they there? They're there to teach you something. So my thing was emotional regulation, spending times on things I don't like, and pure skill. So these three things, when put together, would stop me from doing something. So emotional regulation is a really hard one. You know, everyone needs to take care of their mental health. It's really weird because art is so intrinsically linked with ourself. So when we have that self blocked, it's hard to make work that is fluid and creative. So it really just, like, anxiety, I always say, is the killer of art. So it's really just about taking whatever ways you can to elevate whatever's going on in your life, be it therapy, reading books, meditating, exercising, whatever ways you find to take care of yourself. Number one. Number two, spending times on things you don't like. We just talked about that. It's so critical to just acknowledge the fear is there. Like, literally take a moment and just feel it in your body. Like, literally, where is it stored? Is it in your chest? Is it in your head? Because those are the places for me where it holds me back. Like, when my head is blocked, I can't speak, I can't think of ideas. I just go in auto mode. So I pay attention to it and I'm like, okay, it's there. What's next? Pure skill. When pure skill is, you know, when you're struggling to do something that you've never done before, what's the best way to do it? Do some studies, look at things that you like of this thing. So what I did was I spent maybe 10 minutes doing studies of the thing I wanted to learn. And then when I got to the canvas and I was like, okay, time to actually implement this thing that I'm really scared of, it was easier because I had new things up my sleeve. You know, suddenly I wasn't struggling as much as I would regularly because I had these little elements in my back pocket of I learned this and this. So what I'm trying to say is it's kind of all about looking back on your mistakes. Your mistakes are there to teach you something. Okay, it's going to be really hard. There's going to be a lot of mental resistance, but just kind of power through it. Pay attention to where it's stored in your body and execute slowly, and then it will kind of snowball into more. Another little tidbit that I need to mention is when I mentioned the 10-minute rule, I forgot a very core part of the 10-minute rule. Do it every fucking day. Every day. Every day. Doesn't have to be 10 minutes. It can be 1 minute. Just 1 minute. But it has to be done every day because you need to build that muscle. You need to like you need to get that. You need your hand to work faster than your brain because your brain is trying to slow you down. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. I have something here that kind of relates to that. I'll be like right back.
Yes.
This is also from Austin Kleon. He has this thing, practice, and then, oh, let me just do that. It says practice and then suck less, and it's like a 30-day chart. And
Oh
that
my
is
God.
like, I love the thing that you're saying about the baby steps, because no matter what you do, you'll at least be a little bit better than you were like 10 minutes before or 1 minute before.
Exactly.
That is fantastic instead of being overwhelmed.
Thank you. Yeah. And like, I mean, there's something really funny is like, actually sometimes you'll feel like you suck more. But you kind of, once you get back into the groove of things, the memory sometimes, like, art is like a muscle, like you have to train it. And if you stop training it, it'll get weak. But the memory of it is still there in your body. So once you get back into it, it'll be a lot faster. So I do want to put that out there for artists who maybe feel like they peaked and they don't know how to come back into that elevated position. So it's really just, it's all there within you. It's just about kind of, keeping it going.
Yeah, for sure. Kind of like riding a bicycle.
Yes, exactly.
I'm really curious. Keep saying I'm really curious.
No, you're
I
fine.
am. So
As you should. Honestly, curiosity breeds the best things in life.
definitely. Something that I'm really interested in is what were you scared of at the start of your art journey or your career? And has that changed? Or have
Yes,
you
that's such a
encountered
good
that fear?
question. That's such a good question because when I was at school, the thing I feared most, honestly, was telling my own stories. I really, really just, I mean, I was surrounded by people who did amazing, amazing work. And I remember everybody had lots of inspiration from film and animation and anime in particular. And I remember being like, I don't watch movies or TV shows. What the fuck am I about to do right now? And I really just spent that year learning. I definitely wasn't like coming out with like any breakthroughs of storytelling. I wasn't like the top in class or anything like that. I was definitely struggling the whole period. All my ideas felt very cliche or like completely done. And here's a little tip for y'all. Nothing is cliche if you just put in a lot of personality and specificity in it, because all the best stories are simply told and told often. There's a book, I think it's by James Campbell, about myth and mythology, but basically it talks about how in human dreams that we all, even though like even from childhood, from ancient like times, we all have the same symbolism and same stories, and it's basically about the hero who goes through the belly of the whale and comes out with enlightened and learn something. So it's kind of something that primates, or it literally exists within our core, within our souls. And I think that you have to just know that and acknowledge that and realize that it is within you. And the best storytelling isn't innovating something new. It's just going back and looking at history and retelling things that people have forgotten. But I was gonna say, like, I really struggled with storytelling in particular. And I remember I spent the summer of first year I think I watched like 50 movies, and I didn't like movies, but I made myself like them, see, I didn't like them at first, but I found movies that I loved, like movies like Heathers, even Mean Girls. Like, I fucking, like, if you look at my art, you can see there's a lot of like allusions to like, chick flicks. because I fucking love some of them, you know? And it's not about the medium, it's about what you're trying to do, you know, it's about the story. Um so I really struggled with that, but over time I think it was just something that I cultivated through lots of just tenacity, but also really just enjoying the medium. And just over time, I found what works for me. It's kind of like what I went back to, like why finding your voice is so important. Like, you know, one person who travels every 2 years is going to have different stories from me. A person who, I don't know, like likes to rock climb and skydive is going to have different stories from me, and they're just as valid. So I think people just figuring out, you know, living life and then going out and doing it will get you the best stories. And anyway, so like, yeah, I was really struggling to get to that point. And it just happened through making a lot of films that weren't that great. And you know, it's funny because I'll look back on my school films and I'll be like, oh my God, I actually love them because they were at least honest to what I was trying to do, even if technically in execution they weren't perfect. So yeah, I really just think it's about sticking with it. It's just about sticking with it, and you'll find the improvement will follow. I think that's the two components about art you have to pay attention to. There's the voice, and then there's the technical aspect. You can get both. Like I hear people say like, oh, you can always improve your technical, but the voice always has to, like the voice isn't as easy to come by. But I think it's literally both. Like I think both can be cultivated in different ways. So when it comes to your voice, when it comes to who you are and how you tell these stories, you just have to study. Like it's just study, study, study. Because it's not like kind of like what I was saying from that book. It's not about finding something new. It's not about innovation. It's about finding things that people are forgetting or aren't paying attention to, you know, and just putting it out there with a
Yeah,
mix
for
of
sure.
different things.
There's this quote
Yeah.
I remember, it might be from Steal Like an Artist, but it says, everything has already been said, but because nobody was paying attention, it has to be said again.
Yes, I think it is
Lovely.
from Still Like an Artist. Yes,
Oh,
exactly.
cool.
It's that mentality of, because I kind of like, I don't know, I just hate it when people are like, oh, I want to make the next new thing. There's nothing like it. Because that's impossible, bro. You
Hmm.
know, like it's, you can be innovative, but innovation comes from studying. It comes from looking within and asking, being curious about things that have been done and saying, what if we change this, this, and this? And you can really make amazing things. And it's such a nice thing to know that all human stories come with from dreams. Like that's amazing. Like we all have the capacity to tell these amazing stories, so why not harvest it, you know? It's just about what you feed in yourself,
Yeah, for
you
sure. Like
know?
stealing from different people.
Yes, exactly.
Awesome. When was the last time that you created something without fear? How did that affect what you made? Has that
Mm,
ever happened?
that's a very good question. I don't know, I mean, well, okay. That's such a good question. Fear, I feel like always exists, at least when it comes to posting things. Like I think when I create something, sometimes, okay, so usually the times where it's not based in fear is usually when I'm just doing it for enjoyment, or from something I'm experiencing that is so strong that I have to put on paper. You know, I think like maybe when people do fan art, I usually feel like they're not doing it through fear, a lens of fear. um I think it's not so different from when I do something that is fear based, honestly, because I think sometimes when you're scared of something, it means that it matters to you. You know, so I would argue that if there is fear within you, that's better. I don't think you can escape it fully, but I think you can make it easier on yourself to ignore the chatter. I think that's the very, like they always say that courage and bravery is not about being fearless, it's about acting despite the fear. And I think that's very critical. Like I think the fear can be much more manageable and much smaller. Like I think I remember someone telling me like sometimes your anxiety is so much that no matter how much good stuff you say to yourself, it's not going to help the anxiety. You know, sometimes you literally just have to pay attention to it, which is why I say when you're so blocked that you can't do the thing, you just have to take a moment and pay attention to where it is and how you're feeling, and just be like, okay, I'm this scared, so I'm just gonna do something very small. But once you get past that hurdle, you'll get to a point where the fear is going to be there. It's going to pop up in funny ways. You might like look at something really cool and be like, wait, why didn't I do that? Or maybe you'll be struggling with like one drawing out of like 500, and you'll be like, ugh, you know, I feel like a veteran artist like me should be able to do this. I don't think it's about not having it, but I think it's about going like, next, and keep going, you know. And I think beautiful ideas come from a little bit of mental resistance. Like there's always going to be a period where you're like, this is the best idea ever, and you're going to be like, oh my god, what the fuck is this bullshit, I'm going to throw this out and no one's ever going to look at it again. No, you're going to have to like work through that. I read something about how like the more important something is to your calling, the more of that there will be, the more of that fear there's going to be, the more of that resistance. I don't know why, but like it's a coping mechanism that a lot of us have, where when something matters to us, we don't want to fuck it up, so we don't do it. You know, it's like I always struggled with this thing. I absolutely hate like disappointing people. Like that's something I really struggle with. So sometimes when something blows up or something is seen as good from someone, I get really fucking scared. And I'm like, okay, if I keep doing it, they're gonna see my flaws. They're gonna see how I fuck up, you know? And I think you have to tell yourself, yeah, let them see. Next post, you know? Just let them see. Who cares? Like, who cares if you care about, like, you know, if they were people that were important to you and they cared about you, they won't care. You know, they'll believe in you regardless. And if it's an audience that you're scared of, you know, like I always say when I lose followers, I'm just like, okay, good, they weren't the real hosts, you know, like as a joke though. But like it's like who cares? Like literally on your deathbed, will this matter? You know, literally when it comes down to it, it's just a perception that exists within air. Like people like I know some of us are going to struggle with this, but like we all have critical sides to ourselves. We're all going to think something shitty about someone else from time to time, but who cares? It's about the people. Are these people going to act on those things or not? You know, like where does it matter? You know, like it's, you care. Yes, you care, and let yourself care, but also move on, if that makes sense. You know, I remember I used to make these comics this was before I even posted them. It was just about, I'm really like, I would just kind of go from a dialogue with me and my ghost bear. And it was just like, I'm really scared to do this thing. And the bear's like, yeah, I know. And then you're like, then I don't want to do it. But like, who cares? Like, it's a perception. It fades into air. Is it going to hurt you? Is it going to physically affect you in a visceral way? And I'm like, no, then fucking do it. You know, I know there's a time and place where it feels like you can't fail, like at a job or anything like that. But even then, I think it's important to acknowledge that like you can't, not everything is going to be at this tier. No way. Because if you don't get to, because if everything stayed at this tier, it would be a line. You would stagnate, you know? So it's about going from here to here to here to here, and then maybe going here and then here, you know? It's just accepting. It kind of goes back to that point of patience. To cultivate mastery in something, you need to have that patience, and you need to go through those like tunes and like going down. Like there's this thing that one of my close friends said, which is like, life is like a spiral, and I think it applies to everything that you work on. So you will go up and up, but sometimes you feel like you go back, but you're still way further in than you thought you did, you know? And in a spiral there's a dip. You know, in that dip, it's completely natural to feel like you're going back, but it's just going up and up and up, even if there are dips in the spiral. So yeah, it's hard. It's a very hard thing to do, you know, like letting yourself fail in front of others. But we only live once, you know.
That
Yeah.
is lovely. I love that visualization of the spiral. That's super cool.
Thank you. Yeah.
When you encounter like a problem or, you know, the
Mm-hmm.
fear, what is usually your first thought?
That's a really good question. probably that it's very simple. Like, I can't do this, or um, this is cheesy. Or like, I mean, it always hits on whatever the person's insecurities is. Usually my insecurities are, I mean, the problem with being, I think this is, one of my friends said this, where it's like, when you're really smart, you can convince yourself of everything. You know, you can prove, you can have essays proving why something is terrible if that's what you feel. So I think it really just, my first instinct usually can be a self-critical voice that kind of, and we all adopt a critical voice from past bullies, or like, comments that have hurt us in our past. And I think it's important to acknowledge that that part of ourselves comes not from within us, but from outside of us. And it's a wounded part of us. And their life is literally just a perception. Like, it's a video game, y'all. It's a simulation, in the sense that your perception is literally all that you will experience. So if you notice yourself perceiving something to be not good, take a second and, like, truly just fight against it. See how you feel if you say, actually, this is actually kind of interesting. Like, just try it. Try to make it an argumentative essay instead of, just one side of the coin, and see how it feels. Because more often than not, it's going to be just that voice that comes from whatever wounding you've had in your past. Because more often than not, art is literally about making those mistakes. Even if something is cheesy to one person, for example, that's something I struggle with. Like, oh, this is cheesy. Like, because a lot of times I deal with emotions that are, bittersweet. So, you have to think to yourself, but what about the person who's going to look at this and be like, holy shit, this is going to change my life? Or what about the simple fact that this is how you feel? Even when you're doing something less on the emotional scale and more of like, oh, this is a drawing. Objectively, I feel like it's bad. Ask yourself, why do you feel like it's bad? The perspective is off. Okay, next time I'm gonna do some perspective studies. So it's literally about, there's the emotional aspect, which is just literal swill garbage that comes from your pain. But then there's the more constructive, like, oh, take a step, do it anyway, and then we'll improve on it.
Yeah, it's kind of like comforting a crying kid and being like, it's okay. It's okay. We're just going to do small little things and make you feel better. That's lovely.
Exactly. Like, it's gonna hurt. Like, it's gonna hurt like a motherfucker. Like, there are times where I remember there were periods where I would cringe at what I had to do and post, and like, I would just do it anyway and just avoid my phone for the day. And like, I would find some, like,
sorry for interrupting, but do you think
yes.
anybody noticed whenever you felt like that, or the stuff that you were making, it felt like that? Did you get any response from that?
I usually get positive responses, honestly. Like, if people aren't gonna be like it's just, you'd be surprised. Like, I've never gotten negative feedback that like brought me to my tears or anything like that. Like, I think if anything, the only time I get negative feedback is if my posts go into like the alt-right community, and it's always hilarious. I'm telling you, Nicole, it's one of my favorite things. Like, one time, I made a comic about like being like having a big nose, and it got like, I got so many comments, like anti-Semitic comments.
Ooh,
Yeah,
oh
I honestly,
no.
it was fucked up, but like, I was just like, I would just be like, yes, I do have a big nose. What you gonna do? And I was like, and they were like, and then I was like, actually, I'm Muslim, so you can troll me with more content. Like, I was just like, I'm gonna help you. It's so fun. Like, it's so like, I really don't think I do get criticism from people online. I think maybe you can get discouraged when something doesn't perform as well, but who cares? Again, it kind of comes back to that point of like, there has to be a space of you to recognize that people of all walks of life are going to look at your work and they're going to think all those things or whatever. But there's also going to be people who think great things. And I think I always get really humbled when, for example, I'll post like a Q&A and I get like a flood of questions or like compliments from people. And I think that for me always really makes me feel happy. But also like even before I had like so many followers, I think I would just take it a step at a time. Like I would literally just, I'm trying to think back to those days. I think it was easier in a way because again, for me, my fear is people watching me. So when no one is watching me, I feel like I can thrive. So it really depends on every person. Maybe some people feel way more demotivated when they don't have people watching them. It really depends on the person, but I really think it's important to know yourself and understand, is this a wounding from past? Like for example, when I look at my work and I'm like, oh, this sucks, like this blah blah blah, it usually comes from wounding of past bullies, you know? Like I have to acknowledge that a lot of times I echo their sentiments and I don't want to give them that power, versus the artist person inside of me that's like, if I tell this in a more in a more subtle way, I think it would make the story work better. Like it really just depends on which side of yourself you're allowing to take reign on your body. And that comes again through mental health, like taking care of regulating your emotions, regulating through journaling, through whatever. Like that's really important if you want to be someone who can create honest work. I think I'm very big proponent on that. Like you can make beautiful work that, you don't need to have that, you can just literally be making beautiful technical work and people will admire that regardless. But yeah.
What's a time when you had those thoughts and fears about
Mhm.
something, went past it anyway, but then you actually failed? How bad was
Mm.
it? Like, how bad actually
Ooh,
was it?
that's a very, very cool question. I love that.
Thank you.
Well, I would say, well, at school we had to make films every year. And at the end of the year we'd have a showcase where we'd show the films off. And I think in terms, I didn't fail on anything, but I think something I really struggled with my art back then was execution. Like I always had really fun ideas, but then when I executed them, I really struggled to make it hit as much as maybe my storyboards or whatever. So I remember like when it came to showing it and like I'd see the reception of mine versus other people. So I do that comparing game, which is inevitable. But again, there's also that part of there are people who are making films that won awards, and then you have your film that's kind of like, just hanging out, swimming. So I think that was for me painful, particularly in my third year. I think was most painful because that's when I felt like, oh, I should be able to do this. I should be able to get a film that resonates with people. Like, what's going on? Um, and honestly, that was positive for me because it lit a fire up my ass. Like I remember that year I worked really hard, but I didn't have all these amazing strategies that I do now. So I kind of remember that summer I just kind of looked at what I was like looked at like what I did, and I was like, I really like a lot of it, but what are the things I have to improve? And that's the list that I'm looking at right now in front of me. It's like I wanted to make my art more fun. I wanted to find a new phase and new style. I wanted to make more ugly drawings. I'm literally reading it out. I wanted to learn how to animate with one of my teachers said most good drawings are key poses. And I thought that was really powerful when it comes to story. I'm kind of playing with acting and fine-tuning story structure, like all those things I wanted to improve. And I just took the summer to just fucking go nuts. So I think the way I deal with stuff like that maybe was the growth mindset, where I kind of took time to mourn it. I took time to just be really sad about it. I hung out with friends and just kind of like delved with my own inner turmoil. And it was hard because there was also personal stuff going on in my life with friends and stuff. So like I was a bit depressed during that period. And I think that's when I took solace in my younger self, because my younger self, again, this is all very specific to me, but like my younger self only had art. So I had a period in my life where I didn't have anybody, I didn't have anything going for me except I had my art. And it wasn't that, and before that was before I got accepted into Cal Arts, before I, had a big following. That was just me being me. So it kind of, you have to go back to your inner child and kind of go back to that point where you did this for the sake of joy, for the sake of whatever it was. Like my sister draws as well, and she says she doesn't enjoy art, but she does it to express herself. Do it to express yourself. You have to figure out, literally forget about, there's this beautiful quote which is like, I should have talked about this. Literally forget success and failure. Like you should go, there should be a point in your life where neither success nor failure affects you too much. You know, and I think that's really powerful, because when you're successful and it's all perfect, you might get stuck in a thing where you keep doing the same thing over and over. But when you let it be something that is neutral, more or less, of course it's going to affect you either way, but like neutral in a sense where it's balanced, you know, where it doesn't shake you too off your high ground either way, either or. And I think that really helped me, where I would just go back into my younger self. I'd be like, okay, I love art because of this, and this. I'm going to draw while I watch Friends or something, and I'm going to work on improving. I'm going to do seriously life drawing. There's always something to learn from life drawing. You know, just literally open a YouTube video of someone dancing and just frame through it, get that gesture down. I would do that. And, you know, I found something to be excited about. You know, if it's like, if you fail, let yourself fail and find something else. Like let there be something to learn from the failure, basically. Even if you try again. Wait, there's this quote I want to find really fast. Okay, so yeah, I found the quote that I was looking for. Basically, the more you fail, the more likely you are to succeed. And this is from Mark Manson, by the way. And Edison tried over 10,000 prototypes before getting the light bulb right. Michael Jordan got cut from his high school team. Success comes from improvement, and improvement comes from failure. There's no shortcut around it. Perfect example of people who tried really hard and failed anyway. They kept going. There's literally no way around it. So I think that's really cool and powerful. It's just literally people, the greats, have failed so many times. It's just about accepting it and taking that defeat and being like, let it light a fire up your ass. That's the way I like to put it. Let it light up. Like, even if you fail 1,000, okay, this is something that I've also struggled with. When you fail a lot, you feel like shit. You hold on to guilt and you hold on to all the time you wasted. Think of it this way. Holding on to that is just going to slow you the hell down. Like if you're carrying a lot on your back, it's just going to slow you down. So if you really, 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 really want to be successful and do this thing that you're trying to achieve, what if I told you, it's like a really like funny thing. Cause like, what if I told you, just let go of all your fears and let go of all your guilt, you'll actually get there faster. Like, isn't that amazing? Like, it's kind of like, because I think we kind of feel like we have to shit on ourselves. I feel like we think that shitting on ourselves will get us to that point.
Yeah, I think that's what we learn.
Right. Like, because I think a lot of uninformed, like, teachers or parents do that. They think that, oh, you did this wrong. Like, what's wrong with you? Like, it's kind of like, and I come from a culture that's beautiful and amazing, but it deals with a lot of shame. Like, it's very shame based. So when you do something wrong, there's big shame that wells up within you. And it's still something I struggle with. Like, even as I talk to you, like, I was kind of thinking about mistakes I've made, like at jobs, and that fucks me up, you know, that really fucked me up that has happened. And I think that this idea that, like, if you actually really truly want to not fuck up, you have to let go of that fear, because like it's just going to create a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like, what if I told you that all these negative thoughts, if you let them go and just ignored them, you can't let them go, they're going to be there, but if you just ignored them and told them maybe, but what about not, like, you really just have to separate yourself from those thoughts. Just kind of like think of yourself and those thoughts as different parts of yourself, different entity. Like for me, my voice, my critical voice is, I like to think of it as a mean school teacher, you know. It's different for all of us, and we all have things that we deal with that are so painful and shameful that it hinders us, you know. And there are going to be days where it does hinder you and stops you, and just go easy on yourself. Just draw for a minute that day, you know. And it's okay. It's really hard. You're not doing it all on your own. We're all dealing with it collectively. It's part of the human experience. And I hope that makes you feel more like less alone. But really, really, we just need to focus on where we want to go, and all that baggage of what we could have done and what we should have done and how we could have done things different and why we didn't do things different and how it was our fault. That can all go out the door, because it's just taking space where creativity can flow. And just tell yourself that if I really want to get better, I really have to let go of that. Like, I really have to like think of it as like it's kind of funny. Like, it's kind of like studying. Like, you don't want to study, but you know studying will help you. Try to think about it as your mind, like giving your mind a cleaner room, like letting your room get cleaned up. Like, just if you let go of these things, you're gonna have a cleaner room and you'll be more productive.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. That kind of reminds me of what Mike Randa talks about, how, like how you said, instead of using fear to drag you down, it pushes you forward to wherever your
Yes,
goal is.
100%, 100%, because it's so like it's so powerful when you realize that fear is within all of us, and it's something that you can use to your advantage, because shame and fear, those things can be good for us in small doses, like 100%. I don't know if you've watched Big Mouth, but it's there it's like a very inappropriate show, but it's really funny sometimes. And there is this character that's basically shame, and every character encounters shame, and at the end you realize shame is actually helping you from not doing your most horrible, and it kind of regulates human nature. It helps us sometimes. Like, if you go and kill a dog, god forbid, there should be shame.
Hmm.
I like how both our faces were like,
Yeah, we're like, how could you?
yeah, right,
Yeah.
how could you, metaphorical Noor. But yeah, like, it's like shame is important in small doses. It's gonna be there, but why is it there? Like, ask yourself, how can you turn the tables on these negative feelings? You know what I mean? It's gonna be there, and what can you do to just give it a Uno reverse card? You know, like, let it. Oh my god!
I
So I think
love,
one of the
I
things.
love the
I
metaphor.
think. Thank you. I think I'm gonna use that for a comic.
Do
But
it,
like,
yeah.
thanks. It's just like literally just turn the tables. Just be like, oh, you sneaky Mr. Negative sock puppet of doom. Like, I'm just gonna reverse this and just do my thing. Because I really do think a lot of my successes came from past failures, that, pushed me to learn. And again, like, it's a cycle. Like, there's this thing that me and Gabby always talk about, which is basically you start out really, a child full of life, full of energy and happiness, and then you kind of learn that the world is kind of fucked up, and you kind of become all emo. This is when you go through your emo phase. Then the circle, turns full when you realize there's still beautiful things despite all the shitty things, and it's a circle. And sometimes I think in our culture we're really obsessed with like, sad endings, or like, kind of ending things with a surprise or an edgy way. And usually those things are seen as more mature or more critically acclaimed. But this comes from that book that I mentioned earlier. The ancient Greeks actually, thought the divine comedy was the utopia of storytelling. The comedy, the seeing the beauty past the ugly, that was considered the most like, awesome thing to do. And I think that with our culture, like, we can try to bring that back, where instead of ending things on like, oh, a surprise, fuck you, Game of Thrones, you can really just wrap things up in the way they should feel most naturally inclined to, and really just work on getting to that third point of the full life of circle, like the full circle of life, which is basically things will rebirth, but Just like there's death, there's life. Just like there's terrible people. There's like, I read this thing that's like, for every terrible thing that happens in the world, there are 10 small acts of kindness, you know? And I thought that was beautiful. And um it's a really just true thing about life, is just there's always going to be that fear and horrible times and failures that you feel like you will never move past from, you know? Sometimes you'll fail and fail and fail, and you'll see all your friends succeeding, and you'll be like, what is wrong with me? Like, I've had that happen to me, and it's so hard when you're in it, but you have to like have that raw self-belief that you will get through it. And if you keep trying to get through it, you will actually break through with with different things. Like, I've noticed that maybe for some people that like in my life, that, you know, maybe they'll have a more seamless transition from one thing to the next. They're doing their own thing and it's awesome. But for me, I learn different things when I'm fucking up and going back. You know, we all have different experiences. We all have, you know, different levels of privilege in our life and different sorts of opportunities. And I think that's going to be okay, because the world is, oh my God, I'm going to quote Hamilton. The world was wide enough for so much, you know, like the world is
Yeah.
big. The world has space for all these collective experiences. And I think trying to be all these things at once, you know, trying to be um an artist, a storyteller, a writer, like all those things, you can be all those things at different points in your life. Like, you can be different levels and just be okay with it, you know? Like, even if you feel like the only thing you're good at is coloring your paintings, like everybody always compliments you on your painting and you want to be really good at story, you can get there. It's just a matter of finding ways to do it in different from your counterparts, you know, and accepting that it's going to be different, and accepting the lessons you learn are individual to you. Because I remember there was this period in my life where I felt like, again, like that thing where I was like the only one struggling and all my friends were, you know, which is not true, but at the time it felt like they were all thriving. And I remember thinking to myself, like, they're going to have a period in their life where they're going to struggle a lot. Maybe it's not now. I don't need to shit on them for having a good time right now, you know? It's honestly like we all going to deal with different things at different times. You know, some people are going to deal with the loss of a loved one that's too soon, or like, you know, whatever, or like a debilitating disease, whatever. Like everyone has their own struggles. And it's not about comparing the struggles, honestly. Like, I think that's going to be useless. I think acknowledging that there are different kinds of struggles and different levels of struggles is important, but it's not going to take away your own pain and take away your own, like, it's not going to help you take that away. Like,
Yeah,
is it
for
going to really
sure.
help you?
I hate it when people say like, you know, well, my problems, it could always be worse, because that is true.
Yeah. Yeah. I
But
mean, 100%, but like, it's not going to help. It's not going to help you get out of it. And like, there's this really cool quote that I love that's like, someone drowning 10 feet underwater is drowning just as much as someone 40 feet underwater. And it's really poignant because collectively, I think we all feel, I think humans in general feel very similarly. Like, we all feel and experience joy in the same ways, but we think differently. And I think making space for those differences and allowing people to, you know, I mean, homophobes and racists aside, but like, just making space for those different kinds of people and different walks of life, and just accepting that there's going to be different sorts of things that you're going to be dealing with, and just validating it, but also trying to make space. Like, I think when people try to be like, oh, people struggle in different ways from you, I think what they're trying to say, or what they're actually forgetting to mention, is the gratitude aspect. So I think all of us have things that we can be grateful for while we're struggling with something. And I think that's the more important thing, rather than being like, oh, my struggle isn't that big. No, your struggle fucking sucks. You're dealing with a lot. You're feeling a lot. That's okay. But maybe it will help you to see things in a better way when you look at the things that are actually still with you. And I think that's more of kind of just calling for an inner power, rather than being like, oh, well, I have this and this, you know?
yeah, for
Like,
sure.
I have this image in my head when I'm struggling with something, where I imagine myself as a little girl hugging my dog that we have now, because I didn't have a dog as a kid. I think that makes me happier than everything. If if I had to chase away dementors, that's the image that I would use. And I think it's just important to just have that for yourself so that you can keep going on. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really lovely.
Yeah. I'm gonna go hug my doggo after this, y'all.
Yeah, definitely. Did you have anyone, maybe at CalArts or maybe in your own life, that helped you or like helped shift your mindset and overcome that kind of debilitating fear?
Yes, I definitely think that, if you have to go through the adventure on your own, that's fine, but the more the merrier. Because we really, like, there are certain things that we can't do without others. There are things that we really just need that experience. Like, I don't know what would have happened if I didn't meet my friends. Like, I'm really grateful that I met those girls, because they, with each of them taught me something different, and I think, like, especially Gabby, who was kind of like a mentor to me in a way, because she was older but we had similar experiences. And I remember I wasn't very confident, in myself, and seeing someone who had go through all those things and come out for the better really, really motivated me and really made me grow. And just it really shapes you as a person when you see someone like you. And it's just crazy, because in so many ways we're so different, me and my friends, but they all were confident young women who were being really unapologetically themselves and creating their work and just living life. And I was just like, shit, I want to be like that. So it it really helped me kind of solidify my confidence, in the sense that, I'm going to be me, I'm going to be hot and cool and sweet, and who cares about anyone who thinks different. And obviously sometimes insecurities will take over, and I will be in a space that I felt like when I was younger. But yeah, just find folks that are non-judgmental and have similar values to you. And you know there's that quote of, like, you're gonna be like the average of the 5 people closest to you, you're gonna make the same amount of money as them, or something like that. I don't think it's about money, but I think it's more about, like, values and how much osmosis actually affects us as people. Like, we are our surroundings. And I mean, if you're someone who really struggles with, I'm just going to put this out there for people who are in a shitty environment, I'm really sorry. Find media that you can relate to. You can have friends and characters. Like, that's what I did when I was younger, and it helped me get out of a life that wasn't right for me. And it's going to be possible for everybody to do that through the internet. But also, if you can, get some friends, because that will change your life. Yes.
What do you wish you could tell little baby Noor,
Oh.
who's gonna like move to the US and like go to CalArts? What do you think she would, if you could bring her here now and show her your life, what was she scared about and what would she love about your life now that she never thought
Mm.
would be possible?
Oh, 100%. I mean, I remember my first year, I panicked. It was when Mike Rando was teaching, actually. I panicked during our first pitch, and I ran away and, like, went to the bathroom, and I had a, like, anxiety attack. And I remember Gabby wasn't even my friend then, and she went after me and got me some water and calmed me down. And she stood beside me while Mike kind of, like, supported me as I told my first pitch. And it was a very scary thing, because I remember afterwards some classmates were kind of like, oh, are you okay? Like, you should be able to do this though. Like, kind of like that kind of energy. Or maybe I perceived it, like, maybe that was just how I saw things, because I was so scared. Um, but I remember that being really something I couldn't pitch that year. But you know what? Now I can. I've pitched to, like, boards of people, and it's amazing how that can happen if you just set your mind to improving time and time again. So I would tell her, you know what? You're going to be okay. You're going to do things you can't even imagine you can do right now. Like, literally, that's the way to put it. Like, I could not even imagine how much I can improve. Like, I read this thing that was like, don't set your goals for the next 10 years. Set your goals for the next 20, because, like, you're going to do those 10-year goals way faster than you think. And you're going to want more. So, like, it really just depends on what it is you aspire for, and shoot for the stars, because even if you go a bit lower, you'll reach the moon, you know.
Mhm.
And it's something that I would give advice to my younger self. I don't know. I think things were just meant to be the way they were, but if I were to give advice to someone who feels like that, I would say literally like all the whole thing we're talking about today, literally fear is slowing you down, and just accept it and let it feel it in your body and move to the next thing. Like that's all I would say, because it's really, so many of us come in eager and excited and scared, and it's just about kind of pushing through that fear and getting to the other side.
Yeah, for sure. Can totally relate to that. I remember, especially with the 10-year goal thing,
Mm-hmm.
when I was younger, I was 12 years old, and I worked really hard on publishing a book, self publishing,
Mm-hmm.
because, it's hard to get people to trust you when you're 12 years old.
Mm-hmm.
But I always wanted to write like an award winning book, and it ended up actually winning an award. And
Girl.
thanks. But what you're saying is so true because when I was that age, I remember telling people about all the stuff that I want to do with my life and them just blowing it off because you're young, you don't know who you are yet, and all the stuff that people put on you. But I totally agree with what you say about identity and how all of us struggle with different things, maybe worse things and better, but we all have something to say.
100%.
Hmm.
100%. Like I do like that's amazing story, girl. Like I'm impressed. Like it's so hard to do something like that, but you did it. And we all can do stuff that we want to do that we're really scared to do, and it'll be way easier than we think. Um or not, I guess. But when you get through the other side, you won't regret it. You'll regret the things that you didn't do, you know.
Exactly.
And
I hear
and
that's
yeah,
what, sorry for
yeah.
interrupting again,
No,
but
but go
that's
for it.
what somebody said that's what people say on their deathbed. They don't regret the things that they did. They regret all the things that they didn't do, that they were too scared to
Right.
do.
Yes. And I mean, it's okay if it's okay if you let things pass, like experiences or opportunities pass. Like forgive yourself for that and just move to the next one. Me and my friend, we have this thing, me and Victoria, we were talking about like we've been trying to like move forward with our art lately, and we've just been looking at things that we want to improve and stuff, and it's been so fun. And she said this thing where she was like, oh yeah, like I've been struggling to do personal work for a year. I don't want to make it 2 years, you know. So I think that's really cool. It's just like do it for yourself, do it for your future self as much as you're doing it for yourself right now, just try to really solidify that work ethic, and over time you will just be blown away by all the things you didn't know you could do.
Definitely. There's this other quote, people underestimate what they do with a single day. Well, people overestimate what they can do with a single day, but they underestimate what they can do with their whole lives.
100%. Time is funny, and that's why patience is so important when it comes to cultivating something like this. It's over time it will sneak up on you. Your experiences multiply. You can get ideas in a single instant, but you need to be in the right place in the right time. Sometimes you need to be doing the right thing. Maybe you'll be baking bread and you come up with this beautiful cottage story, set up with bread making and friendship. It's like things like that. You just need to experience life and balance out that critical voice.
Yeah, definitely. Totally agree. Is there something like currently, like a project or something that you're putting off because of fear?
Ooh, I mean, of
You don't
course.
have
I
to
mean,
answer if you don't want to. It's
no, no,
totally
no,
fine.
no, 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 no. I mean, I would say I'll tell you this thing that I not right now, but literally very recently. So yeah, like the graphic novel that I mentioned I was working on, there was a period where right before starting, because we're about to pitch it, and it's looking really cool so far. But right before I was about to start it, getting, it's one of those things that really, really mean a lot to me. And because I feel like with big projects, I get really nervous. I kind of it kind of been it's we've been developing it for like a year and a half now, and I feel like I could have done it faster. You know, it's just like I spent a lot of time being really scared to do it. And but at the same time, I'm nearing the end, and like I did it, you know. It's and getting to that point from all those things I said was literally everything I've already told you. Was I was really scared. I know why I was really scared. It's because it meant a lot to me, and I didn't want to fuck up something that means a lot to me. But I knew that to get good at something, you have to fuck up. So I think I was just absolutely pissed off at that. Like I was pissed off. I was like, I want it to be perfect. Like what the fuck? Um, so I would avoid it. And I think over time, you know, my poor sweet agent, her name's Jess. She's amazing. Love you, Jess, if you're watching this. So doubt it. She was very patient with me, and you know, at a certain point, I kind of realized again, like you're going through your own shit. You have to get through it. You know, like I was going through some stuff, and eventually, I was like, you know what, this is enough is enough. I need to get this done, and I set myself a deadline for like to finish it in a month, and it was basically just 10 pages of art. It wasn't too crazy, but because of that mental resistance, it felt like so much. And I just spent the first couple of days just looking at pretty graphic novels that I like and trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And just kind of like what I said, the studying element. I did some studies, and after a while, I kind of realized like this is something I really care about. That's why I'm scared. So I'm just gonna put in the hours. And I have this thing. Let me show you if I can pull it up. There's this thing I was talking to my friend about, which is like I really struggle with being. I struggle with being what's the word? Type A. I'm not. I think I'm an organized person, but not in the traditional sense. You know. So I figured out the best way for me to be creative but also productive is to make lots and lots of notebooks.
Oh,
So,
oh my gosh, this is so cute.
thank you. Instead of having like, I've tried to like bullet journal and it never worked. I would never continue to use it because it would have everything I have to do in one book. It would stress me the fuck out, you know, because I have this problem where when I get in productive mode, I have to do everything at once. So I broke it down. So I have story and reference. I have ideas, comics and projects. I have webtoon ideas for my project that is pending, but you know, hopefully within the next year or so I'll develop it. And I have things I want to avoid. So this one's my least favorite one. I just like, it's called pending with a skull. It's the things that, you know, you kind of have to do within the month or so, but you keep avoiding. And this one is my special one, which is work log. So in my work log, I would put in my hours. I obviously, ideally, you'd want to get like more than 2 hours or something, but you know, it was really struggle for me. So at first it was like December 14, 8:30 to 9:15, 9:15 to 12, 12 to 2, and then I'd stop. And like, I just kept like putting in my hours for a while. And then after a while, I didn't need it because I was getting my work done for the right, like for the 8 hours and more or whatever. So I realized like some days I can only work 2 hours, but some days I can work 11. So it really just depends on what kind of person are you, what kind of needs do you have for yourself that will help you be productive. They don't have to be the traditional like, oh, I wake up at 6 and I have my kombucha at 8 and then I go jogging and then I do it every day at the same time, because that doesn't work for me. I get anxious. I get like, it starts to weigh on me to do all those things at the same time. So what I do is I have specific things I want to do. I want to draw, I want to work out. Depending on the day, it will either be a heavy workout or a light workout. Either it will be 2 hours drawing, 20 hours drawing. That's just something that works with me because I'm kind of like, my personality is very like, I'll have highs and lows that are really high and low. So like, I try to work with that. Work with what you have, you know, work with who you are.
Yeah, definitely. That's great advice. I actually, I have kind of the same thing sitting next to me.
Oh my God, share.
But yeah, I also have like mini notebooks and stuff like that. But you're totally right. Like, this is crazy. Like, I can't believe we both do like. Okay, wait, where's my chart? Where's my chart?
I want to see the chart.
Oh, okay. but this is just for February. But you're right. You just like
Ooh,
put in those times
I
for
love
creative
it.
and all that things. And oh my God, like you said
Yes.
with the 10-minute rule, I have I call this like adventure cards or menu of days, but I have like all these cards for like
Yes, you've shown
working
this to
out and like
me.
yeah, but honestly, like here's my thing from January. But
Oh
you're
my
so right.
God,
Like
yes.
it's like especially the creative days, I either do like this one, I think I did like 6 hours straight, and then this one I did like
Girl.
nothing. So you're
Uh-huh.
so right. Like that's especially for people who are like that. They don't have like strict routine and stuff like that. It's so much more important that you're doing it rather than what you're doing. Totally agree.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, I love that so much. Like, I love your cards that you have for everything that you have to do. That's so smart.
Thank you. It's
Uh,
like a game, like how you said. Like
exactly. Like, just make it fun. Like, find a way to get your things done, but also like experiment with the way you do it. Like, I think I always struggled with like not being the type of person that did everything at the same time and all the time, and it just but like I just realized like I'm a different kind of person. Like you have to give the needs that you have for yourself, and that's the way it goes.
yeah, I'm curious because that is a weakness, but um, you know how our weaknesses are sometimes our greatest strength. So I'm
Mm.
wondering, how does the working on everything at once, what good have you seen from that?
Like doing everything at the same time.
Yeah, like how you're fluctuating energy levels and how you do so many different kinds of projects and stuff at the same time. Do you see any
Mm.
benefits from that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the benefit is very clear and simple. I feel fulfilled in my life in the sense that I am doing the things I want to do. I think I mean, I touched up on that when I was talking about like making the book, like opening the page and writing the things about yourself and who you are. I think there was this really cool study that was talking about like people feel fulfilled with three things: love and friendship in their life. So like having a family, having someone you care about, that could be fulfilling for some people. That's all they need in their life. There's some people who get it through success. They want to succeed in whatever discipline they have and just keep improving. But then there's the third one, which is surviving. You know, especially like people like I think this psychologist was at a concentration camp in Auschwitz, and he noticed that all these people had one thing in common. It was to survive, and that's so powerful. You know, that we have the human race wants to live on for like through so much horror. And I think, you know, you can take from that that we need meaning in our life, even if it's as simple as surviving, if that's what you need right now. um so for me, it's like when I get through that period of surviving, if that's what needed to be done, at the point I get to the point where I'm like, okay, what am I doing with my life? I am the kind of person that I need love and affection. I can't just be work only. But at the same time, I notice when it's no work, I still feel like unhappy and unsatisfied. So I think with all these projects and doing all these things, I, I just feel like I'm doing something for myself. For the like when I see myself as an old person, I see myself painting, like making beautiful paintings that like I can't do right now. And I think that's a really powerful image that I want to work towards, because even if I'll be alone, I'll have, hopefully, I don't want to jinx it, but like you never know. But like anyway, that's my ideal. You know, I think that's something that I want to have in my life. I think studying for the sake, you know, that feeling you get when you figure something out, it's so satisfying. So I think it's kind of like chasing that emotion and just kind of seeing things grow, and just when you feel like you're in that cycle, it just feels really good. And like I said, there will be periods where you get blocked off, kind of like where you're cynical and you think things can't go right. And then there's that period where you realize, no matter, even when you can get through tough things, and it kind of goes into that like little joy bubble, and it keeps going. Like happiness isn't something that stays; it's always in flux. And really, I think the benefit of doing all these things all at once, or I mean, it doesn't feel like that to me. It's really just about like starting with one thing and just watching it grow. And for me, that one thing was always like, I think for me, my life mission or whatever is to make people who like people like me feel less alone. I think that's something I wanted when I was a child. I felt so alone, and books were my savior. So like, to be that for someone, whether it's through my Middle Eastern like comics, or my more like emotional, like dealing with depression thing, like whatever, it's just like I just want to kind of go through that and just kind of like there's this quote that I was like kind of like, we're all just blinking lights to be like, do you feel this way? Do you feel the same way too? Is this how you feel? Am I not alone? Like, it's kind of like we're all just looking for something like that.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, there's also this other quote where it's like, I'm putting messages in a bottle, so I'm desperate for connection yet picky on who gets the message. It's kind of like that.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
And
good. That's
you're
really
right.
good.
Right. And
Yeah.
I think that's how I feel. Like, I don't care if like I don't know, someone who reads my comics or stories or whatever looks at it and like, I don't like, you're not my audience, it's okay.
Mhm.
But I know there's people like me, because holy shit, there has to be. And you get surprised, like you get humbled. Like the story about my online dating experience, I always used to think that I was the only Middle Eastern artsy girl who is tethered between my culture, because I kind of like, I don't drink, I don't really like, I follow a lot of my religion's ideologies, but at the same time I don't, because I'm like, I also dress the way I want. My view on religion is very flexible. I don't necessarily have to be with someone from my religion. Like, so I was so shocked. I actually met someone who was from Iraq, who was Muslim, who was a film student. Like, it should have been a love connection, right? It was just, we were friends. Like, I didn't, it was just like, what the fuck? Why do you exist? Like, it was just like a very like, huh? Like, it was just like, it humbled me, because it made me realize, no fucking way am I the only one,
Mhm.
And even when you meet someone like that, it doesn't guarantee that you'll finally be happy, you know? So it's just about giving sometimes. I think when it comes to success, I don't think you feel it really. You don't really feel it. You're giving. You shouldn't be feeling it. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that does
Um,
make sense.
yeah, so yeah. I don't even remember the question.
Yeah. I don't either, honestly,
It's
but
fine.
that
It's fine.
whatever it was, that is a fantastic answer because
Thank you.
yeah, I totally relate. Like I'm Indian and I
Mm-hmm.
remember being in middle school and finding your comics and Michelle and being like, "Oh, I can do this? There's somebody else? Like there's another like brown person." It's so cool. And then yeah,
Also,
it's
fun fact, I
incredible.
met Nicole because we ran into each other in LA. Like, that was amazing. Me and Gabby were hanging
Yeah.
out at a coffee shop, and Nicole just came up to us and we're like, what?
You want to know what I was doing? I was like drawing in my sketchbook to be like, I have to let them know I can draw. I have to be like, I'm one of you, and hopefully they'll glance at me.
Oh, sorry, girl. But I'm glad you came up to us, because, like,
Yeah, it's
friendships were born.
seriously insane. Like honestly, you never realize how important it is to like see yourself or like you're going through this journey of life alone. But then when somebody else says something or you see someone else who's like you going through the same thing, it's a complete like paradigm shift.
Exactly. Like, because here's this thing. Oh my God, I love this one. I read this thing about how I think you can't run a certain amount of distance in under 5 minutes or something like that. I don't have the details at all. And this one guy was like, what? Fuck that. I'm gonna do it in way less. And he practiced and practiced, and he got it. He got it on a perfect day. And then people were like, oh, well, maybe it was because the lighting and the air was at the perfect time. And he was like, no, fuck that. I'm going to do it during a storm. And he did it. You know what I mean? And I think that's just so
That's
fucking
so cool.
amazing. Oh, and I think, I don't remember. There's this one, I think his name is Usman Bolt. like the
Usain Bolt?
fastest person.
Usain Bolt?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes, the fastest man alive.
Uh-huh.
He actually, like, his competitors are faster than people who have won in the past. Running against him made them faster. You know what I mean? Isn't that so
Ooh.
mind-boggling? So I think we do need our perceptions. We're so limited by what we know. That's why I say, fuck it. Even if you failed 100 times, believe you can do it again, because the world is so much bigger. The world is literally so much bigger than you think. If you think you're the only one, fuck, you know, like, there's someone going out there exactly the same thing. You'll be surprised. And like, that's the thing, like, with that, it's just so powerful because you need other people sometimes. Like, I don't know if you've watched Russian Doll.
No, I
It's
haven't.
really, it's a really cool show. It deals with addiction and deals with how you can't face addiction alone. Like, you'll need other people to get through it.
Mhm.
And I think that's really, really poignant, because sometimes there are things that we wouldn't be able to do without other people helping us and lifting us up. And I think that really took shape once I got older. Like, I didn't know who I could be without all these opportunities that I had. You know, I shudder to think about what could have happened if I stayed where I was. But at the same time, I probably would have gone out in a different way. You know,
Yeah,
I
for
had a
sure.
friend tell me, like, I was talking like, oh, I wouldn't have been able to do all the things that I did if it wasn't for Cal Arts or like whatever. And he kind of just went like, Noor, what do you mean? No, you would have. You would have found a different way. Like, what are you talking about? And I love that, because I think if you're really passionate about something, there is a way. It might be harder, it might take longer, and that may be unfair. It might be due to prejudices that are out of your control, like racism and poverty and stuff like that. But there's something different. And you know, and we kind of like, whatever there is on an individualistic level that we can do, we should try to strive to do and encourage people to do, as well as lifting up other people within our community that need help and our voices aren't heard. um so yeah, like, it's really just really great when you find someone like you. It's just so soul bearing.
Absolutely. I totally agree.
Yes.
What do you think helped you get out of your comfort zone? Like in the
Mm.
depths of, that fear that stops you from doing anything.
Honestly, sometimes it's a bad thing happening to you. Like, I think life will keep going. Like, I remember, like, I recently made a comic about it. It was a really long one, but like, it was just something I did for myself. And it was talking about how, like, I my coping mechanism for like when things are rough is to just go into my fantasy world. It's just to go into my head, go into reading fan fictions, doing whatever. And like, those things are good and they nurture me, but I knew that a part of it was I was avoiding myself. You know, I was avoiding my life. And I think the thing that got me out of it was simply just life kept going. When a happy thing came, I would cling to it. But when a bad thing would come, there was nothing, you know. I just, like, the ground fell underneath me. And I think it's important because, again, it lights up a fire up your ass. Like, I I would ideally in the future like to work on trying to improve when things are good. Like, that's something that I personally still am working towards. And I mean, I still do it subconsciously, but I want to be more proactive on it, I guess. But I think when you reach a point where you're like, this, I can't live like this, you know, you kind of need to just be like, just think about all like, I think at times like that, survival is key, because you kind of think like, okay, how do I get myself out of this hole? Like, what, like, you're desperate, right? You're desperate, and when you're desperate, sometimes solutions come to you. And I mean, it's not the best way, I wouldn't recommend it for people, but like, that's what happened for me personally. I kind of went through a hard time in my personal life, and I just kind of reached a breaking point where I was like, you know what, I'm avoiding my life because of this. I'm avoiding my friends, I'm avoiding my art, and that stuff brings me happiness. So once I started, like we talked about, all those steps to get to that point where I can do it again, I found myself a lot happier, even though I'm still struggling with those things that are hard. It's a little bit easier because I have the things that are me outside of those factors that I can't control. Like we're all living in this pandemic right now. Everyone's kind of going through a difficult time in their own way. And I think it's literally just about finding yourself a little, like a corner of happiness amongst all of this shit. Because like, you know, you're still alive, you know, you're still, time is still going. We can't exactly go out and, like I said, like I can't exactly go and date right now. But I'm finding little adventures with, you know, watching shows that are really awesome and trying to study from them and trying to learn and just interacting through the new age that we have on social media and just making work for myself. Honestly, so much of the work that I do is personal and I don't share it, but it still makes me happy. Because then when the work I do share comes out, it's different, it's new, it's something else. Yeah.
Do you feel those things that make you happy? Do you feel
Mm.
what am I trying to say? What draws you to them? Or what do they remind you of? Do they give you hope
Mm.
of something better?
I think it's like kind of like, for example, like something that makes me happy is my dog, my baby, my angel, my little love. So I find ways to like play with her. Sometimes I give her little baby massages. I'll find like ways to like incorporate her into my life and just deepen my relationship with this little dog. But it's like things like that, I think is really, it's just, I think whatever you liked as a kid. I think if you explore your inner child, I love that concept because it really just brings out your primal urges, but also your primal loves, I guess. Like whatever you were drawn to as a child, you're probably still drawn to in a way. And by exploring those alleys, you find different things to love. Like I always loved cartoons, but I like kind of like what I said about watching Avatar: The Last Airbender. I wasn't into action. Like I would get bored. Honestly, I tried to watch it when I was in high school. Couldn't get through it. First few episodes. It's fine because I probably wouldn't appreciate it as much as if I did now. The version of me that plays action video games and really enjoys looking at these kinds of things and storyboarding. So like there's always going to be something for you. It's just about looking for it and just focusing on whatever it is you want to cultivate. Like my music taste is shit in a way, but like I say that in a loving way because I'll listen to whatever, just give me a genre and just I'll find something to like in it, you know, and that's for that. But with films, I'm so pretentious. Like I'm a pretentious person when it comes to film, and like you can't make me sit through a shitty film because I get bored. But it's also fun to watch shitty films, you know what I mean? But like,
Yeah.
So I think it's just letting yourself be yourself. Like it's literally just letting and acknowledging it. Like who cares? Again, like it's okay. Just pay attention to what you listen to. Like if you have a critical voice inside your head, don't listen to that voice. You know, just keep moving forward, and you will find better things for you. Yes.
You talk about this fear of like disappointing others and stuff, and how
Mm-hmm.
that like affected your work and stopped you from doing things. Looking at your work now, I'm wondering what was the journey like from the mindset change from going of I better not disappoint people. I gotta make this nice so they don't hate me. To like how you said, doing stuff for yourself regardless of whether you fail or succeed.
Yeah, I mean it's still a battle. Like I think I the reason I had that mentality is like because you know as an I really struggle with like mentor figures or like people who are older than me looking at my work. That's the thing that always fucks me up because of personal experiences, you know? And like I think I still struggle with it in a way, like because I do censor myself sometimes. But I would say the best thing about that is it still creates a story, right? I think maybe sometimes romanticizing yourself is the best way to do it because it's a story about a child who maybe had a figure that was harsh on this child. And now the child is an adult and still sees that figure in everyday people who aren't out there to harm you. So I think when I romanticize it and create a story in it, I'm able to see what that hero would do in that situation. And what would the hero do? Of course, they would do it anyway. And I think let yourself disappoint people. Like I've disappointed people, and like there are people out there who I never got redemption from, you know? And I have to like let that be, because again, it's something that will always happen in life. And the faster you accept it, the better it is. Like you're always gonna go back and be like, oh, I shouldn't have said that, or I shouldn't have done that. And I think as long as you're being active about when it's a real mistake that you've made versus you just being yourself and not getting that validation. Like there's also this other quote that's like, you can serve your heart on a little platter and cut it into tiny pieces and people will still not want it, you know? And I think that's really true. Like I think there will be people who will not like resonate with your work, and there will be people who you will disappoint because, you know, maybe for example, something I would struggle with in the past is like why I love my agent is because I deal with like a lot of mental health issues, or like especially because I'm back home. So like she was very patient with me and like would understand that, whereas maybe I've had experiences in the past where people would not understand that. So I'm not going to blame those people for maybe ignorance or their own struggles. Maybe they didn't have the time, they didn't have the luxury of being patient with me for whatever reason. So I think it's just kind of like also empathizing with those people who you disappoint and understanding that it's not your fault necessarily. Because, oh, this is something that I really love, which is like most of the time, of course, there are very clear red flags in situations where there is someone in the wrong. But most of the times with conflict, no one's really wrong, you know? Like sometimes you're gonna want to sit in the me and my sisters have this thing where none of us want to sit in the middle seat because it's very cramped. Do we all have a point? Like it's cramped. Does one person deserve it than the other? No. It's like neither of us are wrong in that conflict, you know? So it's kind of like just accepting like you're not a bad guy for wanting that, but at the same time they're not a bad guy for wanting the opposite thing, you know? It's kind of just like in those moments from day to day, you kind of just need to kind of go easier on yourself and others, and just fight for things that matter to you. Like for example, like maybe me and my sisters will be arguing and they say something that I really don't like. They point out an insecurity. Then I'll speak up and be like, hey, you can't do that. This is a boundary for me. You know, I think it's just literally about picking and choosing your battles and figuring out when it is that you need to stand up for yourself. And the same can be applied to like disappointing people. When is it that they're being like, okay, like y'all are being really fucking rude, get out of my life, versus we don't match, there's nothing I can do about it, live your life and I'll live mine. So I think it comes the same with disappointing people. Like, you know, the level you're at, maybe they wanted more and you're not there yet. What can you do? You just be like, hey, I'm really sorry, maybe one day I'll prove you wrong, or prove like get that approval back or whatever, but who cares? Like it's just, I'm gonna move on now. Put yourself first in those situations, because ultimately they're not going to be thinking about it too much. They're going to be reacting based off their own projections of reality, you know? Like I'm going to have aunties in my culture, like, you know, the very like typical, like you have to be beautiful to be loved or whatever, and that's really fucked up. I don't ascribe to it at all. I don't need their approval at all, you know? I think that's something I'm lucky with. But then when I meet people who I actually like in the art world or whatever, that I want their approval, that's when I struggle, because that's something I value as well. But again, I have to kind of put that same mentality of like, even if you like it, fuck you, it doesn't matter, I'm gonna move on, you know? It's just about reminding yourself. There's literally no other way, because the way, I think there's this really cool quote that's like, there's a very big difference between knowing and realizing. So you know in your head and you realize in your heart. So sometimes you'll know something, but it will take you years to realize it to be true. You know, it's kind of like how logically you will know that you're not a failure if something doesn't blow up on the internet, or if you don't get picked for an award, or if you don't get the job, or like whatever, you know logically, but you feel it in your heart. Let yourself feel it in your heart and move on. You know, that's the only thing you can do that will help you grow.
That's such
Yeah.
a kind and compassionate view to
Thank
failure.
you.
I really like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks. And like, I mean, honestly, like I'm not always thinking this way, you know? Like I
Mm.
have my other side that's very, very, very critical, but like it's just about, getting through it, getting past it and just, like there was a period in my life where the negative thoughts were so bad that I wrote down my worst insecurities and then I made essays arguing against them, like, and I pulled it out whenever I was really struggling. I'd pull out my essays. So sometimes, doing the favor, doing something like that when you're feeling okay, so that when you feel bad, you have something to hold on to that could help. It's just about getting through life in the best way possible and the easiest way possible. Yeah.
Yeah, you talk about how you mentioned finding that comfort in stories and how you think about whenever you encounter a struggle, what would a hero do? What would the main character do in this situation? How does do you feel like you live your life as a story, being someone who tells stories?
That's a really good question. I think we all do. Like, I mean, even in psychology, like something I've learned, like, is that we all have stories revolved around things that happen to us. Like, I remember I was talking to friends about like being bullied as a child, and she kind of pointed out they're children. Like for her, it was children bullying children, and that's normal. But for me, I felt it as if it was still happening to me to that day. And with time, I actually began to see her point of view. Like I realized it, that mind and heart connected, and I realized that childhood bullies do affect you. You still feel that pain, but it's not what you thought it was. It's not, you're not actually being bullied for being annoying right now, because people don't do that once they get mature. They probably learned how to bully through, maybe their parents were bullying them. You know what I mean? Like a lot of,
Mhm.
children bullies are acting out based on things that are happening to them. People don't learn like to bully. People don't learn to be mean like naturally. So it's interesting. So it's kind of like time and time again, I will get to a point where I feel low and I feel bad, but realizing over time through lessons, like it's going to happen slowly. Like you're going to realize those things slowly. It's not going to happen all at once, that you feel like you don't feel like that little kid anymore that's being bullied in a playground. It's going to take time. So yeah.
What do you think is a common myth that kids like me or animation aspiring animators and students have about the animation industry in terms of that fear?
Hmm. Well, I guess you tell me, girl. I don't know. I think, trying to think,
Or what were you
fear.
scared of, like when you first
Okay.
started?
Yeah, I think you kind of, what you see online, I think makes you think that you have to, like, you always, I think I was reading this thing, I was like, you see people's best work online, don't compare yourself to that, basically. Like I think I wondered how, like, I would see how people do things without knowing how long it takes to get to that. I think I remember I used to think that like making a beautiful character design comes from literally the second you sketch it out. And once I realized, like, no, that actually means you need references, you need some work behind that, you need to like ideas, you need thumbnails, all those things that come. I think you need to realize, like, the finished piece takes so much work behind it and so much steps along the way. It always starts ugly. And like, I remember I had a teacher who would say, literally, your first ideas are always the worst. So like keep making more ideas. Like, like if you had 2 gag ideas, come up with 10, and then look through the list and see which ones you like. Like it's so much more than you think it is at a glance. So kind of just knowing that, I hope that makes you feel better, like to your child self or whatever. Like for me as a younger kid, I think that would have made me feel better to know that when I see things on sketchbooks, so many a reference. Like so much is, that's kind of like things I mentioned. Like I didn't realize how much people used reference, and like when I'd see it, something on TV or whatever, I'd be like, oh, that's where they got it from. And that's good. They should do that. And so should you. Yeah, I think that's the answer to that.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Um, you grew up in Dubai, right? So I'm
Yeah,
wondering, in terms of what you just said, going from, I imagine there's not many, especially like I didn't grow up with many like artist friends or people who did art. And then suddenly,
definitely.
like being thrust into that environment where you're seeing other people's sketchbooks for the first time and like seeing the
Hmm.
behind the scenes of all the things, like films and how they're made. How did that affect that view that you have of the final product versus the work?
I think it normalized it. Like I think when you go into the industry, you kind of glamorize it, and you what's the word, you romanticize the
Romanticize?
people working behind it. Yeah, like you think they're so cool and so much better. I had so many embarrassing moments where I'd go up to artists, I like
Oh my
but
god.
like
Yeah,
they're
same.
really normal it's fine. Like they like if they're nice, they'll appreciate it for the most part. But like it's kind of like understanding that they're really regular people. Like it's kind of like never meet your heroes, but like meet your heroes, you'll be surprised by how chill it is. Kind of addition with animation, I think that's really the thing that like blew my mind. Like I'd meet someone who worked on like Kids Next Door, like one of my teachers, and I was like, oh my god, that literally that show shaped my life. What the fuck? It's like weird but also cool. I think it's you do really need to normalize it. I think romanticizing it and wanting fame and wanting to know all the coolest people, I think that's limiting. I think it's really limiting because there are so many cool things being done by in every walk of life. You just have to like look for it, you know. And I think attaching names to projects and like trying to look for fame in art, I think that's something that, you know, when you're younger you kind of do, but ultimately it doesn't. You'd be surprised how many amazing artists there are that just don't post their work. Like what about them? They're fucking amazing too. It surprises you. It really surprises you how much pure talent and hard work there is throughout the whole pipeline. And it just kind of, that's why I kind of told you like my ideal thing when I'm older is like me sitting in a house painting. Like I think it's fame for fame itself is there's a quote with that, but it's like you're not gonna achieve it in the same way. And I think it really does come from like understanding what it is you want to create, like, you know, what it is you want to communicate with your audience. I think because behind, like, that's what we're all driven by when it comes to stories. It's emotion. So like all the glitz and the glamour, like think about what's his name, what are those movies, the Transformer films, who was it done by?
I don't know.
He's the one director everyone loves to make fun of.
Yeah, with the action scenes and the cuts, yeah.
I'm looking him up.
Okay.
Michael Bay. Michael Bay.
Michael Bay, yeah.
Yeah, like I mean, of course, there are still people who enjoy the fuck out of those movies. But like all he does is do those cool shots and nothing else makes sense. You know? Like you can do that. You can do that. And you will still, because he still is very passionate about those cool shots.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? So it's just like but it goes to show that if you're really passionate about that one thing, it will like sell, it will sing, you know, like versus like something like Avatar The Last Airbender, which is like amazing storytelling and like, you know, that just like you can sink your teeth into, and you just it's just echoed throughout everything that is done. And just it's just nice. Stories are great, and I think really just not being lazy with them and really just digging into what makes them great and finding a ragtag group of people who are as hungry as you and looking to improve just the way you do is so valuable. Because when I did that with my friends, it was just so like nice, because all of us are out there doing our individual thing, but we still come back together. Like I always say, like my friends are like they're like my sisters, you know, like I see them as family. And I think that with that, you kind of, with your own families, you can create in your art communities. it's just so valuable, because you don't need to have success and fame. It will be like an after effect of all the passion and fun that you're having, you know. And yeah, that's kind of what I have to say about that. It's just something that, like, it literally is a side effect.
Do you
And it's,
think
yeah.
you have like a really cool career and you know like going to Cal Arts and all the
Hmm.
stuff that you worked on and done. Um, if you didn't achieve that thing you were just talking about whether you do it or not,
Hmm.
would you where would you find that same sense of fulfillment, or would it be the same? Does it
Like
matter?
with art.
Yeah, with art.
Oh, I mean, I think I would still be journaling in my book, writing my feelings. Like, I think it again, it comes from whatever brings you joy. I probably would still be doing fan art. Um, like, and I thought about it. Like, there are other things that I'm passionate about. I could have been a psychologist. I could have been like a teacher. Like, there are things that I think that we all have versions of ourselves that we can explore, and it's really up to us which one we choose.
How does that the psychology and the teacher thing, all those
Mhm.
interests, how does that influence or how did those feed into
My
your
art.
art?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I think you can see the psychology part at least. Like, I always talk about like mental health and stuff like that, and it does come in handy when I'm like developing worlds and stories. And like the teacher part, I think, is just mainly because I can like get along with kids a lot. So I see that part of myself. And like, really, like, I have siblings, like many siblings. Like, I'm one of four, so like I just, it's really hard when you see someone struggling and you can't help them, but when you can help them, it's so rewarding. So I think I try to talk to whoever is willing to listen and try to like help them with what I know. And I mean, there's also the risk with that, which is I don't know if what I know is right. So it's just it's a give and take. And yeah, I think it's very valuable to have just kind of other interests that you put into your art.
What is something that you thought was scary but you were able to overcome?
Hmm. Oh, I mean, I can tell you a quick story. Like, literally, I mean, do you want something art related or non-art related?
Anything, whatever you feel.
Okay. Okay. When I was telling my parents I wanted to do animation was a hard one. Like, I remember I had a math teacher. His name was Mr. Saab. He told he would teach math, and like, didn't teach math. He would just give us life advice. So I loved his class because I hated math, but I loved him. So like, I would, I'd have fun. And he told this story about, if my daughter ever came to me and told me she wants to do music, I would laugh in her face and tell her to go upstairs. But if I heard her play on the piano every day, working on it, and I'd hear the beautiful melody, I'd tell her to go do it. So that taught me to do, and then by doing, you'll get what you want. So my parents, they didn't want me to do art. I remember when I told them, they were like, what about computing and then maybe a minor in art? Nor, what about computer and then maybe you can do something with video gaming? Like, no way, I don't want my daughter to be an artist. You won't make money. All that like classic stuff, especially like Middle Eastern family. It's a joke. Doctor or engineer or
Yeah.
get out of my face.
Hmm.
I'm sure it's the same with all like Asian communities.
Yeah.
And it's and like, yeah, like, so what I did was I just kept doing it, and like I kept pushing and I kept drawing and and my parents were encouraging and loving about that. So like, over time they were convinced. And like, that is something I also had the privilege of, that because some parents would have just, been like, no, fuck you, get out of my face. Like it could have gone worse, but for me it worked. And maybe there's a lot of people like me. Like, girl, I rarely meet any Middle Eastern girls in animation. Like,
Hmm.
it's so rare, especially Arabs. Like, I don't know where they are, they're not there. So like, yeah, if any Arab girls are watching, like, yeah, do this with your parents and good luck. So yeah, it's like, yeah, that's I think was led to the best things in my life. So really just try. Why not? And if you
That's
don't get it, there's something else. You'll have another dream to come with.
That's
Yeah.
really wonderful. Thank
Thank
you so
you.
much for being
Thank
on
you
here.
so much,
I really
Nicole.
appreciate that, especially since it's like my first time interviewing someone.
Of course. I'm
But yeah,
so happy. Oh my God. That makes
do
me
you
so happy.
know, would you like to put out like your contact info or places people can find your work?
Yeah, I mean, you guys can find me on Instagram. My name is Noor Rasoul with an extra L because the Noor Rasoul that the other one is taken by some random ass girl who had to private her account, probably because people kept following her. Yeah, that's basically that. And thank you so much.